So this is very timely in that we realize the need to prepare for the next, say, era or generation, wherein we envision a post-COVID situation, which is less problematic, of course. And the only way to do it is to prepare ahead of time. So, again, I'm Dr. Joyce Franseca Miranda. I come all the way from the province of Rizal in the Philippines. I'm a healthcare leader and an educator as well. So we talk about sustainability. Sustainability is actually that balance that we get when we combine the three very important factors in an organization, which is people, of course, the planet or the environment we have, and profit or the sustenance of the organization. And for it to be attained, there should also be equitability, bearability, and viability, depending on the different factors that interact with each other. We have social factors, we have economic factors, and even environmental factors. So, sustainability is that ability to meet the present needs without compromising the capacities of future generations. So it's ensuring the balance between economic growth, environmental care, and social welfare. So we don't think about ourselves now. We also think about other people in the next generation in the years to come. And so we say that sustainability leadership is very important in the COVID-19 pandemic, and that we have to get through this pandemic, get through this time, and get everyone ahead and going into that post COVID-19 situation. So we say the flame of a single candle can light a thousand more without diminishing its own light. That is the very concept of sustainability. It's being able to light up the other candles of the next generations so that our leadership can be more fruitful. It's not just about now, it's about the future to come. And so, being an effective leader during the COVID 19 pandemic is being a sustainable leader. So, sustainability leadership is what we need to get us through the COVID 19 pandemic. So we go back to this combination or interplay of factors. We have social, economic, and environmental factors. And again, like I said, sustainability is a matter of combining all of them and achieving an equilibrium. But somehow, yes, it can be difficult, but it is attainable. It's not easy. Of course, it's not easy, but organizations come out and are able to sustain themselves. However, during these times, there is a big factor again that comes in, and that is COVID 19. And that just about topples off everything. And the sustainability goal that we want to achieve is not that easy anymore. And so, before I go into what kind of leadership we have to have during this COVID 19 pandemic, I'd like to share with you this short video from the United Nations Women Leaders.
I've been truly inspired, and I know others will be too. It is time for us to rise as women leaders, taking action to conquer the pandemic and come out stronger.
We are in the middle of a major global crisis. The coronavirus knows no borders.
The world is collectively experiencing human distress unlike ever before.
A virus anywhere is a virus everywhere.
You cannot turn a blind eye from the long-term consequences that will likely imprint our children and youth.
The only solution that comes to my mind is the inclusive recovery of the whole world.
We all face the same enemy, and we stand to gain by bringing the full force of humanity together.
Each country can start to prioritize during this moment when the world is being asked to pause, that we can come back fitter and better.
The UN's COVID-19 Response and Recovery Fund is a chance to unite the world around our common goal, to support the world's most vulnerable people.
For the victims, who are seen and unseen, who are known and unknown, for the heroes who we applaud and who we sing, and the unsung heroes. That's why we rise.
We can do it working together, but we need to respect each other, to see each other, to hear each other.
And becoming more empathetic and more kind towards one another is the only way we can fight this pandemic.
In our global village, solidarity is the only option.
So, like the UN leader, one of the UN leaders said, for the victims who are seen and unseen, who are known and unknown, for the heroes who we applaud and who we sing, and the unsung heroes. That's why we rise. So, this actually also encapsulates the idea of sustainability. We don't only fight for what is here now and for who is here with us now, but for those who are yet to be seen, the future generation. So, the women leaders are actually the ones who work so much for the recovery of livelihoods from COVID 19. And so we go to the concept of leadership, male and female leaderships, both. So we have several organizations, of course, government, there are businesses, and there are educational institutions, the community itself, and of course, health institutions that have leaderships. And we ask ourselves, is it really a lot better to have a female leader than a male leader? Is it one of the criteria that we need to have for an effective leadership to be instituted in an organization? They say women are often near but not at the top. So, actually, in the COVID 19 pandemic leadership in the early months, that was until around May of 2020, it was seen that countries with women in leadership have suffered 6 times fewer confirmed deaths from COVID 19 than countries with governments led by men. But actually, after so many months and into the 2021, it was seen that male governed countries also have the means to control the pandemic. So it is not anymore an issue of male or female leadership, but of course, what kind of leader we have. So I'm not going to veer so much away from the scene, and I will put myself as an example. So I am actually a healthcare worker, a doctor, and a leader. So I've been a medical director in my own hospital and in several other hospitals, the head of the emergency room department as well, and the head for the disaster and crisis team. However, these are things that we see now, but we ask ourselves, and I ask myself, who are you really? What are you really? And why are you a leader? Therefore, we look at the things that are not so obvious. And I see myself as the orthopedic surgeon that I once was, not the medical director, not the head of a department, and not the head of a team. So, as an orthopedic surgeon, I learned how to be organized, to have systems, to plan. And these things I think are essential for becoming a leader. Also, I have become a professor and a keynote speaker. And in that sense, I was able to command attention and I was able also to communicate well with my students and with my audience. So these are things as well that are needed for a good leader to be in the position. And of course, lastly but not the least, I am a mother and a wife. And of course, this leadership that I have over my family is such a big training ground for me to be a leader outside. So then, with all of these, I ask myself, am I really fit to be a leader? And am I fit to be a substantial leader, a sustainable leader? And my answer is yes. So it's not just a matter of being male or female or being trained in being a leader, having degrees or courses in management and so on. But you have to be a leader, especially when a crisis sets in and you are found to be the best person to do the job. And therefore, I call myself and so many other leaders in this crisis the unconventional leaders. So there are a lot of unconventional leaders that we know of, but the best examples would be Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook. And they say that Steve Jobs was a very efficient leader and has kicked Apple into so much fame and so much profit. And it's because of his unique leadership. And they say that Steve Jobs is a very unconventional leader. He was said to be a high maintenance co worker instead of a leader. He would have high demands, yeah, but he would surround himself with people who think like him and who work like him and demand from this team of workers. And so he is a co-worker as well, not just a leader, and that makes him unconventional. Mark Zuckerberg, on the other hand, has adopted several strategies that are autocratic, democratic, and kind of carefree. So he's said to be a mix and match of several styles and strategies. So these are concepts of the unconventional leaders. And we say that conventional thinkers and leaders are different in that they are more preserved. They like to conform with standards. So conventional leaders are into conformity, compliance, and everything. Also, they are after agreement and consistency. They want everything to be at peace. They want everything to be status quo. And lastly, they like to contain. So problems and issues are contained in a way that they want to contain them. So these are the concepts or these are the traits of a conventional leader. The unconventional leaders, on the other hand, are different. They welcome ideas and knowledge, they integrate them, they like mixing them up, and they like developing strategies from these ideas and knowledge, especially the new ones. Unconventional leaders also welcome change and conflict. So they see changes and conflicts as means of learning and probably of improvement. Also, unconventional leaders like stepping out of the box, stepping out of the comfort zone. And that is a very, very important characteristic of the unconventional leader. So, if you're a conventional or an unconventional leader, it doesn't matter when you're faced with a crisis because leadership never really stops, even during a crisis. But what is the better thing to adapt? Well, the better thing to adapt is unconventional leadership. And I say that when you have a crisis, it is better to be unconventional rather than be conventional because you have to welcome the changes that are coming in, especially in this kind of crisis that we have, the COVID-19 pandemic. And an unconventional leadership during the COVID-19 pandemic can get us through because precisely of the three things that we saw. First of all, there are a lot of ideas and knowledge about COVID-19, the disease and the virus that we need to integrate and we need to form policies out of. Next is that there are so many changes and conflicts that we encounter because of this pandemic, because of this disease, the COVID-19, that we have to learn from, we have to welcome and deal with. And lastly, there are so many things that are taken away from us, such that we need to come out of our comfort zone. We need to step out of the box. So I've been speaking about stepping out of the comfort zone. What is the benefit of getting forced out of your comfort zone and leading outside of your comfort zone? So I'd like to give you some examples that will help you understand why stepping out of the comfort zone is very important. During this pandemic, and I'd like to state some examples in a private institution like the hospitals I'm in, we have decreased patient numbers. There are less numbers of patients, more COVID patients than non COVID patients, and there are decreased revenues. Secondly, we have fear stricken personnel. We have nurses and staff who are afraid of working, afraid of getting mixed up with patients who have COVID. And we also have fear stricken patients. The patients themselves are afraid to go to the hospital. Of course, there's increased expenses for intensified infection control. Unlike before, when you have simple standards of infection control, now we have to upgrade. And so there are increased expenses for upgrading these infection control measures. Of course, there are uncomfortable adjust comfortable state because of the uncomfortable adjustments. And I'd like to give as an example the wearing of the protective gear. So many of our workers would end up wearing protective equipment to precisely protect themselves from COVID-19. And this makes our work very uncomfortable. Also, probably the most vague but the most striking would be our uncertainty of the future. So, this uncertainty of the future kind of makes us adjust and step out of our comfort zone. Now, as leaders, if we want to be a sustainable leader, we need to exemplify in our own unique way the passion and excitement we have for the future. We want to not stop where we are, and we want to sustain what we have and pass it on to the next generation. And especially in times like now, where the future seems so distant and the present dim. And so we need to get into a sustainability mindset. You get out of the box and have a sustainability mindset. We move from looking at ourselves as leaders to looking at our followers and our constituents. And more importantly, we have to move from now to tomorrow. We cannot just think about the present. We cannot just think about the present and ourselves. We want to think about who's coming after us and what the future will be for these people. So, stepping into the comfort zone is actually expanding your comfort zone. So, as a leader, every time you push yourself outside your comfort zone, even in the smallest of ways, your comfort zone expands and your self confidence grows. So, it is important that the unconventional leader grows the self confidence that I'm talking about. So, this is very important in the pushing of your comfort zone outwards. So again, it all boils down to leading during this COVID-19 pandemic in an unconventional way and outside of your comfort zone. So we look at the crisis that we have right now and we look at the five phases of crisis management. Where are we now? So we are actually somewhere in the middle. During this COVID-19 pandemic, as you can see, we have done preparing, preventing the disease. We have treatment procedures in place. We have treatment measures in place as well. But we are actually that in that section you call containment or damage limitation. So we are far from recovery and far from getting ourselves back together. We are still in the point of containment and damage limitation. And also after recovery, there's a lot to learn about what we've experienced. So this is where we are during the crisis. And so it's better that we attain kind of leadership that will sustain us through the COVID-19 crisis, not just in the schools, not just in the hospitals, not just in the governments, but all over the world. So I introduced to you the countdown to sustainability leadership. We first have the seven principles of sustainable leadership, the six strategies, five behaviors, four elements, three self steps, two styles, and your one team, which you have to support during this crisis. So I go to the seven principles of sustainability leadership. We have depth, endurance, breadth, justice, diversity, resourcefulness, and conservation. So depth is saying that sustainability leadership matters. It engages every individual, be it the leader and the follower, in a holistic manner. So sustainability leadership is not superficial. It taps the person itself, be it the leader or the follower, and engages the person in a holistic manner. So we talk about involvement. So that is the depth. Next, you have endurance. Sustainability leadership lasts. We must aim for passing it on to the next leadership. So, I myself, being a leader, must not think of my own achievements, and I'm not in competition with the other leaders and the other leaders of the other generations. I have to pass on everything that I have achieved and make it a lasting legacy for everyone to enjoy. So, it plans and prepares for succession, and it's not just an afterthought, but from the first day of my appointment. So, as a leader, you must think of passing it on even on the first day of your leadership. So, as we say, succession management is important. Thirdly, there is breadth. So, if there is depth, there should be breadth. And that is sustainability leadership spreads. So, it ensures that others, your followers, and other people around you share and help develop your vision, and you try to tell the people that no, you are not really just followers, you are also leaders. We are all leaders because we have to sustain the organization, and that is spreading the concept of leadership. Of course, we have justice. So sustainability leadership is socially just. So what does that mean? It benefits all constituents and followers and other organizations as well. So when you develop something, you don't just enjoy it for your own self or for your own organization. It is something that you can pass on even to other organizations to enjoy. So it's not just for a few at the expense of the rest. Then you have diversity. Diversity is when you create, you recreate, you learn, and you improve. So in this pandemic, there is a lot really to learn, and there are a lot of adaptations that you have to do. So it's a form of creation and recreation and learning. So it says here that, promoters of sustainability cultivate and recreate the environment and has the capacity to stimulate improvement on a broad front. So it's not being stagnant, it's creating and recreating. Of course, another one is resourcefulness. So, a good thought is that sustainability leadership is being thrifty without being cheap, being indulgent without being lavish. So, that's kind of hard to absorb, but actually, it's all about delegation of resources. It's also asking what you have. What do I have and what don't I have? And as a leader, you must be able to tap resources that are within your reach and also try to find some ways to get through the resources that you don't have just yet. So that is resourcefulness as a sustainable leader. And of course, lastly, a sustainable leader should be able to conserve energy and resources. And this is where the cycle of pause, assess, anticipate, act comes in. And we will go to this in the next section. But suffice to say that a sustainable leader does not exhaust all resources and all energies all at one time. He should be able to know when to stop and to conserve energy. And so we go to the six strategies to lead to a crisis, to lead a crisis, I mean. And like I said, there is what you call the strategic pause. The strategic pause is precisely the pause, assess, anticipate, and act cycle. But before we go to that, other strategies that you must have to lead in a crisis is the following. You have to set boundaries. You have to know your limits, but you have to know up to what extent you can expand. Also, you have to communicate openly and frequently, especially to your followers and to other leaders as well. You have to make your meetings count. So you don't just waste away your time because this is a crisis. You have to have results coming out from your meetings. You also have to create a flexible plan. And of course, lastly, you don't try anything alone. You, of course, want to engage all of your followers and all of your constituents in whatever work you're going to pursue. So I go back to the first strategy, which is the strategic pause. The strategic pause is actually the pause, assess, anticipate, act cycle. And this should be ongoing because it helps you maintain a state of deliberate calm and you avoid overreacting. So, what is this all about? So, the pause, assess, anticipate, act cycle can be well explained by the COVID-19 developments. So, you know that there are a lot of things happening about COVID-19. You have improving knowledge on the nature of the virus. You have improving measures also on infection control and prevention. You have development in facilities and equipment. Treatment is ever evolving in COVID-19. Quarantine strategies, in fact, differ from one time to another. And now we have the vaccines. There are vaccination strategies to deal with as well. So the pause, assess, anticipate, act cycle is when you want to just pause for a while and evaluate what to do next. You try to assess what you have and what you don't have. You try to assess what is going to come out, and then you try to anticipate the possible consequences or the possible results of your action, and then you act. Then afterwards, you pause again. You pause again to look at what you did. You assess, then again you plan, and then you anticipate what will come out of an action that you plan to do, and then you act again. So it's an ever continuing cycle that you want to adapt because things are so much evolving. So next we go to the five behaviors to drive leadership in times of crisis. So there was once a colleague who told me that leading during unprecedented times is an opportunity for greatness. And I do believe in that. There is so much in store for you when you want to drive your organization into a time of crisis. And so you have to have five crucial behaviors to drive leadership in a crisis. And these are the following. You have to have authenticity. So authenticity is equivalent to being honest with your pronouncements. You have to be real and you have to be tangible to your followers. Next is you have to be clear. You have to have clarity. You have to give instructions clearly. You have to make points clearly, and you want to make your pronouncements as understandable as possible. Next, you have to have empathy. Empathy is what when you reach out to the person, when you reach out deeper into the person and you want to make the person understand not just on the level of the intellect, but of course, maybe emotionally and spiritually as well. That's empathy. Now, consistency It's not just a matter of being consistent with plans or being consistent with your goals. It's also a manner of consistency of your behavior. So you cannot be moody, you cannot be so touchy at times and then stoic at others. You must have this consistency of behavior and mood at all times as a leader. And lastly, you have to have intentionality. Intentionality is when you act on a certain thing with a certain goal and you try to stick to that. The intention is there and the goal is there and you try to stick on it. So that's intentionality. Next, we have the four actions to be a good leader during the COVID-19 disruption or crisis. So these four central elements of leadership are as follows. So for crisis leadership to be successful, you have to have situational awareness. So taking it in the context of COVID-19, you have to be aware of the situation in your own country, even in your own province, even in your own community. So this differs, the situation differs from one place to another, and you should have this awareness of what's happening in your own place. Then you have to have also an awareness of what happens in other places. So you can adapt, you can compare, and probably you can get some of the strategies the other persons are getting on with. Next is you have to have good decision making. So decision making as a central element of leadership is very crucial. So a leader is supposed to have the final decision, but decision making can be autocratic and democratic, and we want to be a mixture of both. You want to have the final say, but you have to have the opinion of others considered as well. Of course, you have to communicate. Communication is very crucial. You have to communicate clearly. You have to tap all of the platforms available, be it social media, be it personal, be it in other forms, written or not. You have to communicate clearly and you have to communicate straight to the followers. You cannot go around during a crisis and waste time. And of course, lastly, which is also associated with our pause, assess, anticipate, act cycle, is energy preservation. There are times when you have to stop. You just really have to stop and look at the situation, preserve some energy and rest, and then go on. Go on the next day or the next minute. But the very crucial thing is to how to preserve your energy when it is dwindling. Okay. So now we go to the 3 steps to lead yourself through uncertain times. So what are these 3 steps? This is what you should have as a leader. First of all, you have to have adaptive capacity. You look at yourself and you look at the organization and you look at the situation and you try to decide, what can I do? Up to what can I do? What do I have to do this with? So you have to know your capacity and you have to adapt to it. You cannot command all of the things or matters that are beyond your control. You have to know to adjust, when to adjust, and who to adjust to at all times. So this is adaptive capacity. Next is resilience. So resilience is a very common in Filipinos. They say Filipinos are very resilient. So resilience is captured in several words. I see it as acceptance, first accepting what you have, then bouncing back and recovering, and finally going on. That is resilience. So whenever we are faced with an adversary or a challenge, you try to get through to it, you try to recover, and you try to go on. That is resilience. And lastly, as a leader, you have to trust yourself. So trust yourself in the manner that you can lead others. You must you must trust that others will follow you and
The kid.
understand you. So that is trusting your leadership as well. And next is the two leadership styles that you have to unify. So they say that there are two kinds of leadership that exist in this organization that we have. So first of all is the heroic, and secondly you have the post-heroic kind of leadership. So the difference is that the heroic leadership is actually traditional. So it is the more masculine kind, it is the autocratic type, it is the concentration of power in the leader. So the leader needs to have all of the time the authority, to have the good appearance, the good reputation. While in post-heroic leadership, it is the more feminine type. and you find there the participation of your followers and coworkers. You have consensus in decision making. You practice empathy and you entertain vulnerability. So that's post heroic leadership. But what to do this crisis? What do we need to have a sustainable leadership? Well, just success in leadership is not marked by how well you do. So it's not just being heroic or post heroic, but how well others do under your care. So the trick is to combine both. You have to combine both heroic and post heroic leadership and come up with this thing you call critical leadership. Critical leadership is actually a combination of heroic and post heroic styles. So during this pandemic and in other crises as well, we must learn how to exercise this critical leadership. So, taking it into the context again of COVID-19 management, you cannot just order people around. You have to have people involved in what you do, and you have to practice critical leadership. Lastly, how do you support your team during this time of crisis like the COVID-19 pandemic? Of course, you have to remain calm. You have to remain calm and you have to instill calmness as well in your followers. And therefore, you have to create talking points for managers and team members. You have to communicate. You have to be open for opinion. You have to be open for criticism and you have to communicate them as well to your followers. Of course, you want to create a resource list for support because you want to be human. You want to assist your followers and you want to be able to help them in your needs, in their needs. And lastly, you have to be flexible. You cannot be on top all the time. You have to go down and look at your workers. You have to mingle. You have to shift from heroic to post heroic and you have to combine them at times and be a critical leader. So that's how you support your team. So before I end this lecture on sustainability leadership, I'd like to share with you how we do it where I am here in Rizal, and I share with you this short video clip on how our healthcare workers are doing under a sustainable leadership I call under our hospital management.
Mo, alamat na kailangan makilala ng buong mundo. Isang pagpupugay, kailangan ipagdiwang. Pasasalamat at ika'y isinilang. Di pangkaraniwan para siyang superhero. Hinarap lahat ng pagsubok, yung iba hindi biro. Meron siyang misyon, kaya walang takot sumabak. Mga buhay na nagkasalalay sa kanyang pangarap. Para pelikula, action, adventure, drama. May konting comedy, love story na pangmasa. Galing sa wala, akala mo talo na tapos. Yung pala siya yung bida, kaya lahat sila paos. Kasi sigaw, kahihiyaw, selebrasyon. Buong mundo magtataka, kakaibang okasyon. Itaas ang kamay, sumigaw ng hoy! Ito ang araw mo, bayaning Pinoy. Saludo sa mga bida ng tunay na nagpakita ng husay dito sa liga ng buhay. Mga kampiyon, mga dakilang, hindi sumuko din ang paalila. Sa inspirasyon, karagdagang lakas. Salamat dumaan kayo sa tamang landas. Kami sa inyo ay saludo, saludo. Walang balak sumuko, walang planong gumuho. Nagkumpay lang, walang iba, binigay niya buong puso. Hinarap lahat ng tuso, pati mga abuso. Nanatiling tapat sa pangarap hanggang naging puso. Ang buhay positibo, agresibo mismo. Kaya pinarangalan siyang bayaning Pilipino. Taas noo kahit pango, di nabigo, di nalito, di huminto. Inabot niya ang ginto. Ngayon tahimik na lahat ng kritiko. Bukang bibig na rin nila ang mga hirit mo. Hanggang nag-trending ang daming likes, di na makalimutan. Front page, headlines, hanggang sa kanto, laman ang kwentuhan. Pag-asa'y pinagsaluhan, pero di naubusan. Binigay ng lubusan hanggang sa huling hantungan. Buhay na buhay, walang humpay. Tago na walang pag-asa pero tinapos. Sabi daw imposible pero di pa rin natakot. Sabi nila mahirap pero nagpusige, kaya lahat sila ngayon sige lang sige. Nung lahat umurong, siya sumugod. Ng lahat lumubog, siya di nalunod. Natutong maglakad sa tubig, pananampalataya. Diyos ang kanyang agimat, kaya walang hindi kaya. Paglaki ko gusto ko maging katulad mo, yeah. May pagmamalaki sa buong mundo. Ikaw ang dahilan kung ba't hindi ako susuko. Taos puso pasasalamat, isa kang alamat, alamat. Sa mga bida ng tunay na nagpakita ng husay dito sa liga ng buhay. Mga kampiyon, mga dakilang hindi sumuko, di nagpaalila. Sa inspirasyon, karagdagang lakas. Salamat dumaan kayo sa tamang landas. Kami sa inyo ay saludo, saludo.
So that ends my talk tonight. I'd like to leave as a message to all of you. Sustainability leadership is needed right now, and it's essential right now for us to get through this COVID-19 pandemic. This is Dr. Miranda. I am a sustainable leader, and good night to all of you.